Welcome everybody to Mark Bajerski YouTube channel. It's been a while since I've really talked about anything kind of deep and spiritual, even though I've done 2,000, 3,000 videos now. You can watch back and listen to most of my videos on kind of traumas and things like that. But listening to my son on one of the podcasts I just did, listened back to it. I found it fascinating, and the reason why I find it fascinating is because it confirms really everything that happens in your life and my life and our children's life, eh? And some people use examples, animals as a great example, tests as they did back in the 40s, 50s, 60s, to show how animals behave. But yeah, I mean, trauma, childhood trauma, and the way you are and the way I am. I don't know about you, but I've spent all my life now, I'm 58, and I've spent all my life, and I've realized I've been trying to change the pattern of something inside me. I've been trying to break the mold of my father. And you can see it actually in a physical sense, right? You watch your parents, you watch your mum. How many people do you know that say, "Oh my God, I can't stand my mum," and then you look at them thinking, "You just like your bloody mum." "Oh, I hate my dad," you say it to yourself, and then when you really have the confidence and the strength to look into the mirror, you go, "Shit, I'm just like my dad." I'm not saying exactly like your dad, but there's trait marks of your father in you. And those trait marks are some kind of memory that we as healers recognize that is kind of molded into you. And that's why the expression I used to use is you have to break the mold of your parents. Now, that's not every parent. You can look at your parents and your parents can be actually more beautiful than you. So it's not always the case, but in many cases we are fighting an invisible force that we can't see, but we can recognize in our behavioral day-to-day mood swings, our angers, our knee-jerk reactions, our thoughts, our expressions. I do things that my dad did, that I used to get angry with, and now I'm doing it. It's a kind of huffing and puffing when I'm doing physical work. I hold my breath, and my dad used to do that, and I used to go, "Dad, you're holding your breath," and he said, "Oh, shut up," because he was Polish, and so I shut up, and little things that he used to do that annoys me, I'm doing it now. It's kind of funny, really. But there is something in that if you're a teenager, if you're 20, even you're 30, even if you're 50 and 60, it's still a wonderful observation to go and sit under a tree and think about. Can you change the fact that you hold your breath? You can if you practice. You can if you practice breathing work. But can you do it when your body is always doing that because it's part of who you are? It's a tough one, right? But I actually believe we can break the mold. There's something about the spacesuit that is created in the image of our parents, and we are in there somewhere, and we are different from the spacesuit. So the spacesuit reacts as a brain reacts because the spacesuit has all the tools that it needs, but your consciousness, the real you, is who you are. You're just experiencing things through this spacesuit. And the most challenging thing is that the darkness knows this and knows that if it can corrupt your spacesuit, you will always be the spacesuit rather than the consciousness that has the power to change the spacesuit, because you only change when you recognize something that you're doing wrong. Most people don't recognize what they're doing wrong. Most people don't recognize what they're saying, which is when I say wrong and right, there is no wrong and right, but if you were to film yourself, if you were to go in Big Brother, which don't ever do that, but if you ever did and then watch videos back on yourself or record yourself for a week and then somebody makes you watch you and how you react, you'll realize that, hey, you know, there is trait marks there of my parents. So I'm lucky because, and so are you. You got two parents, and maybe if you are really lucky, you got one parent that was really beautiful, kind, sensitive, understanding, and then you've got one which is really challenging. So you have got these genes or cells, these memories were in there that are part of both. So you've got a mixture of both. So I've got a mixture of my dad and a mixture of my mum. So when I watch my son and watching him talk and his passion and how he talks, I can feel and see a little bit of me in that. And I see and feel a little bit of his mum in that. It's great. It's lovely to see. But I also saw something even more beautiful. He surpassed both of us. He's wiser. He's more cooperating. He's more. He's a deeper thinker. He spends more time with his children. Although I didn't do so bad with China, I was with her for 18 years and spent most days with her, nearly every day with her. So no, I don't. That's not. It's just with Nico, we weren't that close because unfortunately, me and a mum parted. And then he got another dad, which was rich dad, poor dad. His other dad was very, very successful businessman, and I was like a poor dad. So he had two dads, which was, I always say two dads are better than one. And if you look back on history as well, diverting here, but it's always good to. If you look back in history, in the ancient times, they used to have groups of 13, and it was like a kind of tribe-ish, and there'd be 13 men, 13 women, and the men and women would look after all the children together. So it would be like a man who didn't like babies wouldn't really bother with them, but then there's another man out of the 13 men that would like babies, so he would interact with the babies. And then when the man who liked babies didn't like teenagers, then the guy who didn't like babies like teenagers would step in. So it would be every single star sign. So there's 13 star signs apparently, not 12. So there'd be 13. You need to listen to the greats to talk about this. So what I mean is when I was happy that Nico had two dads, and especially happy that he was lucky enough to go skiing in France. He was lucky enough to be in a helicopter nearly every weekend, flying to France wherever they were going. So he had a great life, and he went to a private school as well, Rishworth in Halifax. So he was really lucky. Wouldn't have got that from me because I didn't have any money then. I was just working very hard. So yeah, point being is, telling you about my life story here, but I'm coming to a conclusion. The conclusion is this: is it possible? Is it possible to change the way you are? I think it is possible, but you will always have this bodysuit that is part of your father's fathers. So you will always have that, and it's an ongoing unlearning, in the sense of knowing, oh, my dad's a bit in me, oh, my mum's up there in me a little bit. I can feel my reaction that way. Can you change and be something else? I don't think we're meant to. I think we're meant to be that and then conquer it. So my feeling is every day I accept that my dad was my dad, my mum's were my mum, and my spacesuit holds my body, my physical body holds the memory and the DNA and the genes, whatever you want to call it. So I actually am part of my dad in me. So I accept that instead of getting angry with that and fighting with it, but recognizing it and trying to make the changes and adapt. And whenever I see something that starts to boil up in me, that I have to realize, Mark, you need to break the mold of that. And that's why you're here, to break the mold and be the better, and then pass it on to your child, which I think I did at the essential point of the birth of my son and the birth of my beautiful daughter, so that they're better models than we are. So that's a lovely thing. But yeah, going back to the emotional state, most people are really triggered by not even recognizing who they are, and not recognizing that maybe part of your thoughts, your feelings, your reactions are that of your parents. And it's not like I'm blaming anybody. I'm not blaming my parents for making me too sensitive and loving and kind. And I'm not blaming my dad for being sometimes overly angry about nothing and getting frustrated and knee-jerking. I'm not blaming any of that. I just need to recognize it and conquer it. And I think you can never conquer. Like, I know really close people to me who constantly moan about their mum, right? And oh God forbid I never end up like my mum. Yeah, you are like your mum. You're exactly like your mum. But you can't say that to them, because that would be the worst thing you could say. But you smile inside and you're going, you don't know how close you are, just being an exact model of your mum. So therefore you didn't break the mold, right? You didn't break that mold. So I guess what I'm saying is that maybe today you might look at yourself in the mirror and say, what is it about me and my mum that I can see in myself? What is it about me and my dad? What is it about me and my dad that I can see in myself that maybe I used to look at him and say, I don't like what he's doing, and yet I'm doing it. So take that on board and change that and make the change and try and work on that. Is it possible to change? It is. Is it easy to change? Well, I think it's easier to change when you recognize what it is that you would like to change and you work on it daily. But you know, I can't change the fact that I've been blessed with the ball patch, and my dad did. How can I change that? It's just who I am and who my dad was, and I've taken and I've accepted that. And actually, I've been lucky because my mum's part of here as well, and apparently I've got a heart on my head. So my mum had a big heart, so it looks like a heart actually from behind. People have said it many times, so that's nice. So if I'm gonna be bald, I'd rather it look like a heart shape. So yeah, I've probably gone off on one. Hadn't made no sense at all, but I just thought I'd just share that with you. So many people talk about, you know, how easy it is to change the nature of ourselves and pass it on to our children. And I think that's what I'm talking about. After doing the interview with my son, there's a change in him that's different from me. And same with my daughter. There's a change in her that's different from me. So I'm proud that they are like they are, because I must have done something to change that, what my father didn't change with his father. So that's a wonderful thing. I've never raised my hand to my children. I love them with all my heart. They always know I'm there for whatever they need, if it's a caring ear or anything I can do. And I'm proud of them. One thing I allow them ever since they were young is their freedom of choice, freedom of expression, and freedom of whatever they want to do in their life. And I've always been like that because, you know, as I was a young kid, having that feeling of you know, being in prison every day at school and so on, I tried to, you know, compensate with my children to give them as much as I could. So, you know, give them the freedom, which now, unfortunately, there's not much freedom for children these days, because of the state of the world and the way it is, and how people are quick to judge. If you want to give your child some freedom, then you're a bad parent, and that was all by design. So it's very interesting. But yeah, there's lots. There's been. I mean, you might ask me what kind of, you know, experiments. There was loads of experiments. You know, the experiments of mosquitoes. where there's rats as well, where they let them out of a cage and they killed them, and then none of the rats would go out, and then there was a new lot of babies being born to those that didn't go out, and then they naturally wouldn't go out. They just wouldn't go out because it's in their genes, it's in their memory cell. So it's just like dogs, they just have this knowing of being a pointer. They have this knowing of needing to get into water. They have this knowing to go into the mountains and find people, and it's just in their memory. And it's like we forget that as human beings, that we have the same in our memory. We have the memory of our past, and I think it's good to recognize it. I think it's the hardest thing in the world, especially if we feel pain from maybe the abuse of our parents in any way, that we don't want to look at it because it brings back too much pain. But we have to face it. We have to look at it and say, all right, they did some terrible things. My dad did some bad things, but that's just my dad, and I don't want to hold on to that. And I don't want to give it to my children. So if you're 18 watching this might be a really valuable thing for you, that you don't want to pass it on to your children. And the only way you don't pass it on to your children is if you work on yourself. And that's why in the spiritual world, we talk about constantly just looking at ourselves inside and out, looking in the mirror, dusting ourselves off and just checking in as much as you can on yourself through the day, and on the evening, ask yourself about how you were, how you acted, how you reacted. What is it that triggers you? Because it's normally trigger points that I find that remind me most of my dad, right? And the loving points remind me of my mum, but my mum was kind. So there's only one answer: be as kind as you can to neutralize the negativity. Be loving, be creative, heal yourself well. My dad used to drink a lot, so no, I'm not interested in drinking. I want to break that pattern. So now my son doesn't drink, and that for hardly anything. My daughter doesn't touch drugs. My son doesn't touch drugs. So it's lovely that we've that what we do in this life can have a ripple effect to our children. That's all I'm saying. Anyway, it was just a little chat. And food for thought. Have a great day. Take care.